Very much. Y'all leave him alone. Y'all be poking nothing in his head.
You got him where you want. Come on, ladies. I'll try not to knock the electronics out of here.
Six o'clock. It's about 6 o'clock. We'll start our meeting. And we'll go ahead and get all the other things out of the way before we pray. In the effort to protect the public and the Board of County Commissioners, a conference line has been set up to accommodate community access to the meeting. The conference line number is 917-900-1022. The access line is 32-34-7. What's that on the end of that? Pound sign. Okay. This is not a toll-free number. You may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting to public comment, please follow below instructions. If you wish to speak, dial 5. The moderator will unmute your line when it's your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address. You will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. This meeting will also be live streamed on the Taylor County Board of County Commissioners Facebook page. If you wish to view the meeting, you must have a Facebook profile. Search under the Taylor County Board of County Commissioners, and you can view the meeting at 6 p.m. The Facebook live stream will not be monitored for questions or comments. Please call the conference number if you wish to speak. And with that being said, this time we will have prayer by Mr. Newman and the lead.
Let's pray. Father, we do thank you for the day. We thank you for all the ways you do bless us and take care of us. Lord, we just pray that you continue to help us to serve in a way that's pleasing in your sight. Thank you for that opportunity. We just pray that as we conduct business here this evening, that you would lead, guide, and direct us, give us your knowledge and insight, and we might move forward in the business of the county and best interest of people. Thank you for that. As we continue to celebrate the season of Christmas, may we just continue to celebrate with peace, hope, and joy, and Lord, all the love that you have afforded mankind by sending forth your Son in this earth. And we just thank you for that. May we each have that opportunity, and may we seize that opportunity to celebrate Christmas and all that Christ makes available. So we thank you for that. Just continue to be with us, guide us, direct us, and we thank you for all these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll go to number 3, approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion? All in favor? Okay, number 4, examination and the approval of the invoices.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, we go to number 5, Commissioner Newman. Discuss the mooring of the Steam Hatcher River.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this evening, I'm not sure if many of those commissioners are aware, I've gotten calls about this. If you look up on the screen here, we've got a picture of what I would call a derelict vessel. That was taken Sunday afternoon, and that's a vessel that's been in this type condition for over a month's time. So obviously we we have some room there for improvement, and I know that WC is actively working to, eradicate this problem, but I felt like it was something that we could discuss as a board, and so what I would like to do after talking with staff and, working with Ms. LaWanda is ask, that we agenda an item on the January workshop, and also have Ms. LaWanda invite, I believe that's Lieutenant Lloyd with FWC to attend that meeting, so we might work together for a resolution to not continue to have these type of risks and what I would say liabilities in the Schenectady River.
What is that in that river?
That is a boat, that is a sailboat that has taken on water, and that is on its side.
Okay.
And that's been that way at least a month. So we're hopefully gonna be able to, work with these different agencies and likely, Dixie County, so that we might, move forward, and not have these type of what I'd call situational liability.
Is that on the Dixie County side, Ken? or-
You know, I was on the Schenectady River Bridge, just where that county line comes down the river, I'm not sure. So that's why I say I think it would be, a good concept to try to, through, county staff and FWC to, try to.
And Dixie County?
Dixie County cooperatively, yes, sir.
Yes. So you say it's been there about a month?
That's correct.
Okay, and has anybody identified who it belongs to from the numbers on it?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Wanda, you wanna?
Sure.
FWC has identified the owner who lives out of state. So the first step in the derelict vessel removal program is to notify the owner with a citation, which has been mailed to, I believe, Tennessee, the owner in Tennessee. That's the last known address. So unfortunately, if some of y'all may recall, we've been through derelict vessel removal situations before, and it is quite an arduous process.
Okay, so I didn't hear everything you said, but, so is there can there be a process so that the owner is liable instead of us having to fund the removal or
Yes.
even the state?
Yes,
Okay.
and that is being pursued by FWC at this time.
Okay, so what is our role in this then?
In this particular situation, we don't exactly have a role at this time. I think, Commissioner Newman just wanted to show this picture as an illustration of the problems that can happen when vessels are moored, especially for a long length of time. And, in this particular case, I believe the owner's out of state. So I think he just wanted to illustrate that point.
Okay, so we have no responsibility,
No, ma'am.
so that's, okay, that's
Not
what
mine.
I wanted to know.
Not at this time.
In my past history with the state and the Coast Guard, they would not remove one at all. They rode off Rock Island there one time, and I contacted FWC. I thought for sure being it was coming on there late in the evening and run over and kill itself, you know. So I thought for sure they'd want to do something with it. They didn't, well, they referred me to the Coast Guard. So I got on the phone, called the Coast Guard. And they want to refer me back to FWC. I said, that's enough right there.
Who's on first?
It was a big, half-burnt, big catamaran sailboat. It still had electronics on it, outboard motor on a little dinghy on the deck, and all that. And I said, well, you know, they said they did say that when I give them the number off of it, it had been stolen in South Florida, ended up here.
Right.
And that's all they want to talk about. You know, so it stayed in the Gulf, I reckon.
Yes.
Okay, so, as a minimum, is part of the process that someone could perhaps flag that with, some kind of light or something so that somebody doesn't come along at night or during the day when there's fog and run into it? Because if that happened, then who's gonna be liable?
I believe, FWC has taken any safety precautions, and they are the lead agency in this particular problem, from what I understand. Now, I can double check with the lieutenant and make sure.
Would you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's just a mast sticking up, that's not a
Yes.
cable or anything running from.
Yes, sir, it's leaned over on its side,
Okay.
presently, away from the river bridge. So it's the mast itself, I believe.
Now, what is it attached to the land?
So my understanding is it will be more, or the rope cables securing that to anchor points in the river itself, would be my understanding.
How is that from the bank?
You know, I didn't measure this, I would say close to the middle of the river, that's my guess.
With that, I'm saying what's holding that out there, is it 4 feet under the water, 2 feet under the water, 3 feet under the water?
I haven't been up close to that one to be able to answer that question. I mean, and I didn't want to get close to it, to be honest with you. Cause I mean, I just,
Yeah.
this kind of potential,
Yeah.
this was just on, an afternoon. And if we had a rough tidal surge or storm or all these other things, just more potential for problems, let's call it. So it just felt like it'd be a good, time to, since we're in this type of circumstance, bring that forward on the January workshop with the lead agency representative there to help give us some education and perhaps some guidance on how we might work together.
Everybody agree with that?
We can make that motion, I'll be glad.
Okay, make a motion.
So, yeah, I make the motion to, agenda this mooring in the Steenhatchee River subject and invite, Lieutenant Lloyd, FWC, to the January workshop.
A motion. Second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
What was the motion?
So the motion is to add the mooring in the Steenhatchee River subject to the January workshop and to invite Lieutenant Lloyd with, FWC to speak at that meeting and help the board understand, the lead agency's position on this subject and how we might work together with FWC and Dixie County and what other cooperative agencies that we need to, so that we don't run back into this circumstance or situation. Try to minimize the risks to, the boaters and to the residents, I might add. If this thing breaks loose, this vessel's taking on water, obviously, but in a bad situation, that could become a projectile and all sorts of things could go south.
Okay, only thing is, if it's their responsibility, I want us just to be very careful that we don't sit here and talk ourselves into obligating ourselves in some way to be a part of this. If they already have responsibility, let's be careful and leave it that way. I don't mind him coming and talking to us and helping us to understand their process, but I certainly don't want to mess around and talk too much and then get ourselves into an obligation that we don't need to get into.
No, the understanding would be that we could have the workshop setting so that we might discuss this potential and the jurisdiction of the FWC, which would include responsibility. The accountability really falls back to the owner of this vessel. The problem is locating that owner, who very likely isn't going to be real thrilled with this event. So the idea would be to work with FWC if there were a need for some sort of ordinance so that we might work together with FWC to minimize extended sessions, let's call it, of vessels being more or less abandoned in these type sites. So that would be the concept of working.
Let me give y'all some help,
Oh,
okay? Number one, this is a navigable stream. So, the federals have jurisdiction also of that. And a person who leaves a vessel in the navigable stream abandoned is subject to federal criminal citations. The reason I know about it is because I represented a fellow that wouldn't move it, and he ended up getting charged with it. And what happened, he ended up getting on federal probation and then had to pay to move it. So, and I think probably that, Lieutenant Lloyd will probably give y'all some information on that. Your responsibility is to report it, you know, and your responsibility too is, of course, to your constituents, so they don't get injured. So, I think it's a good idea that we hear from, Lieutenant Lloyd, but, you know, we don't need buck passing. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay. All right, we did pass, didn't it? Everybody?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay, all right. Go to number 6. The board to consider approval of a draft countywide emergency medical service, EMS agreement with Centric Ambulance Service.
And I believe we have representatives from Century out in the hall. If y'all have any specific questions, we cannot answer. Conrad, did you wish to speak to this?
Oh, I'd love to. We've been working, Luanda and I, have been working with, Century with regard to the agreement that, like 27 pages,
I think we're up to-
28 pages. And if y'all remember what first thing we did was, we looked at their draft and I wrote y'all
Yes, sir.
a pretty long letter with regard to corrections and so forth. I think it's a pretty good agreement. And Luanda and I are excited about it. You know, I think it was asked about escape clauses. Well, there's like 17 different things, 16 different things, way that you can get out of it if they violate. Of course, we've got to pay them. And there's also a provision that Luanda found that we needed to put in a bond in there, and there's a bond in there and so forth. And I hope it works out. Of course, our recommendation would be for y'all to agree to the agreement.
It is a 5-year agreement. The subsidy is $68,086 a month, which equals $817,032 annually. In the case of a significant economic factors, the contractor may request a subsidy increase. Of course, the board would have to approve that. The contractor may request an increase of non-contractual rates annually without board approval. Those are capped at 3%. Only increases greater than 3% would need board approval. Response time performance is included in the agreement. That would be after the initial 120 days. And in that time, the county and the contractor will work together to develop mutually acceptable dispatch protocols. That's really necessary in order to institute those performance standards. As Conrad said, there are 16 conditions to terminate the agreement for contractor default, and there is a performance security in the case of the county takeover of EMS services. I know Century has been working with the hospital. They've had a truck here, I believe, for about a week to assist the hospital with the EMS services now. This would be effective January 1st, if the board approves.
Okay,
So we have a 5-year on the service and a 3-year on the steam hatchie is gonna be included in this. We have a 3-year on the rental.
They're separate agreements, yes, but the lease in Steinhatchee was a 3-year agreement.
what was the difference?
I think it was just, I don't know that I have an answer for that. Mr. Johnson?
I pulled it off another agreement, it was
Yeah.
3 years there, that's
Yeah.
as simple as that. Yeah, nothing strategic behind it.
Right. Right.
We would love it for it to be 5 years, if you want to keep us there for 5 years.
You need to mention about it flows into this other thing on the agenda with regard to the lease for the Steinhatchee substation, right?
I believe that's what Commissioner English is referring to. That lease is a 3-year lease.
No. Remember that there's a lease with the hospital.
Yes, I haven't gotten to that yet, yes, sir.
Okay, well, I want them to understand this, and I want Century to understand this, and I can explain it, but go ahead. Okay, the hospital has a lease agreement, and they have leased the substation. That
Steve
lease,
Hatchett.
yeah, that lease agreement has to be terminated. I have called Mr. Kleinmore, who's the attorney for the hospital, and I've written him. Klein has recently had a procedure in the hospital. I don't know what it was, but he's recuperating. But he called me and said that he mentioned it to the interim CEO there, because I don't want Century to think, oh, we're going to get that substation if we don't get that lease canceled, and then we can do a lease with, with Century. So it's got to be done, and I think we've got some quote unquote leverage to get it done. But I want y'all to be fully aware of that.
Are they willing to terminate the lease? I mean, are they willing to give up?
They don't want to better be.
What's the ending date on the current lease with the hospital?
They don't have any use for it, I'm sure, until they terminate it.
There's no ending date. There's, if I'm not mistaken, we need to terminate the emergency medical services agreement with the hospital. And then the actual lease with for the hospital building would need to be changed to allow for them to contract to Century for the space at the hospital. So we have several different agreements that we need to address. I would ask that if the board wishes to move forward with the Steinhatchee Station lease, I'm assuming it would be contingent upon terminating the lease with DMH.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can that be a 5-year agreement? I mean, could that be adjusted?
Sure.
I have no problem
Just
with
takes a pencil.
that. If Century
I don't have a
was,
pencil in that.
We might want one.
It just would make more sense to me.
Okay, yeah. You said 3, 5?
I would expect a 5-year agreement to go along with,
It would be cleaner.
yes.
It would be
Service,
cleaner.
the service is a 5-year agreement, so
Yes.
I don't think you plan on going away from Steinhatchee, and Steinhatchee being a part of the service, so it just will be a 5-year agreement. Really nice.
Okay. I did see something in there, I didn't know. Now, they have their own medical director?
yes, sir.
Is that a doctor that stays in the hospital, or he's on
Yes,
site?
sir. It's a contracted position with Century, and, do you want to speak to that, Mr.
Sure.
Johnson?
You want to speak from here? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes, we do have a contract that we subcontract, and it's required by the state, for us to have our state license to operate as an ambulance provider. We have a medical director. And so we do have we have 2 medical directors that actually work for us now. The one that we have currently that's going to be servicing the Taylor County area is Dr. Swinton. She's actually out of Jacksonville, but she covers our Columbia County 911 operations. And so because it was such a quick time frame, we asked her to oversee the medical protocols and use her medical protocols for the first quarter of 2021. And then in the second quarter of 2021, we met with Dr. Rosenthal out of Tallahassee at TMH, because most of these patients are going to be going that direction, and it makes more sense to have a doctor out of Tallahassee being in charge of the medical direction for our crews out here. So we met with him, and so the plan is to do a contract with him for the second quarter, and then going forward in Taylor County, and overseeing the medical protocols in that direction for our crews.
Okay, the second question I had then, we were talking about the employees up there now, that's work for the group now. Have they been talking to you?
Yeah, so when, I was telling some of the other gentlemen, when we first took on this contract, I said to myself, man, have I got myself into big trouble because I can't get employees? And I can tell you that is the one thing I feel most strongly about now, is that we've got employees. We did orientation last week, and then this week, we had 18 current employees of the hospital system come on with us, and we have another orientation starting next week. So we have a total of 25 employees, which is more than what we need to get to run this thing, which will give you more staffing than you've had in a long time, in Taylor County. So I'm extremely excited about that. I've met the employees, I've had lunch with them, and they're super excited too about this change, this opportunity, the things that we're bringing forward to them, and the opportunities that they have as employees. Additionally, too, that they all got a little bit of a pay raise when they came with us, and we also offered up a sign-on bonus too, to try and make sure we drew them in there. So, I would say probably 90% of the employees that you're gonna see on the truck are the same ones, that are working in this area today. So there's gonna be a good continuation of care and knowledge, and none of that knowledge is gonna be lost. We do have a few employees from Columbia County that wanna come over and work in Taylor County on a full-time basis, probably because they live in this area, that already work for us. And so we have a couple employees that are gonna be full-time in Taylor County. They're coming from our Columbia County, just to kind of help the existing people who are coming on board with understand how we do run our business.
So,
Go ahead.
so this takes effect January the 1st,
Yes, correct?
but you're already here working, but officially it happens on January the 1st, is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. The hospital was struggling with some staffing and some vehicle problems, and so they asked us to see if we could float a truck over here, and help them out whenever they could. I think they had a vehicle go down or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but so we said yes. And so we've been sending a truck over here every day, helping out with that, taking all the IFT calls, back up to 911, whatever we can do to kind of help prop up that system until we get into January 1. The plan right now is, DMH is going to have employees working on December 31st, a 24-hour shift. And then like at 6 o'clock at night, we're actually going to have them punch out at DMH, turn in those keys, and then turn on our keys and punch in and change their uniform. And so at 6 o'clock at night, on the 31st, so we'll actually kind of technically switch on our sides. The hospital asked that we could do it before the 1st, and so we decided at 6 o'clock, since something's going to go wrong, I'd rather have it happen at 6 o'clock at night than midnight.
Okay, so as of January the 1st, then we don't have any ties with the hospital, correct?
As far as
We
contractual.
don't, I mean, as far as any kind of agreements or any kind of, anything else, they're on their own, right?
Who's that, the hospital?
Yes.
Well, yes, I think the whole point of this was to, take them out of the EMS business and put Century in. And this is what this is doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
The only crossover is that we're going to still use their station at the hospital until we can find an appropriate location. We're actually trying to find 2 stations in just have better response times instead of just putting them all at the hospital. Trying to have 2 stations. So we're working with a couple local realtors, trying to find some suitable commercial space to put 2 ambulances.
Well, I just want to say to you, I'm very excited to see y'all here. And from everything that I've heard and researched and all, I think that this is going to be a vast improvement. It's going to protect our citizens more. And really, I'm just, as one commissioner, I'm so happy that we're able to work with you all. And I want to welcome you to Taylor County.
Well, thank you very much. I can tell you on our side, we are super excited about this as well. What we do is what we live for. This is what our business is. So we're stoked.
How do you guys internally, how do you guys handle your response times throughout the community? I know we got clauses in here as far as if things are not met, but internally, how do you guys handle your responses?
So we will be linked up into the smart cop system that the sheriff office has, and so that's where all the times will be kept. So I'm under this contract required to turn in our response times to you, but you guys have the ability to verify that data if you wanted to as well, because that's the system we use. All of our vehicles are tracked via GPS, and so we have the ability to play back all that information. So we know exactly what happened and where they were at and when it happened and those types of things. So we have, and then that data can also flow into the sheriff's department's smart cop system too. We're still working on getting all the data links and all that other pieces of thing, but we can keep track of our trucks very well. And no matter what the crews push on their computers, you know, we can always verify that with GPS. So we have kind of two levels to verify all that information.
I got one more question, I'm sorry. If you pick up a patient, does that patient have the right to tell you, I want to go directly to Gainesville, or I want to go directly to Tallahassee? Can you do that?
If it makes sense. So if you're in Steinhatchee, you want to go to Gainesville, and Gainesville is appropriate for your level of need, then absolutely. If you're a trauma patient and you want to go somewhere that's not a trauma hospital, we're going to insist you go to a trauma hospital. You know, and that's just because all you can do is get to the trauma hospital, they're just going to tell you to leave and go to the trauma hospital. So we will take people where it's most medically appropriate for them to take. And if that's within their request, if they, hey, I want to go to Gainesville, or I want to go to Tallahassee, or I want to go to Perry, or I want to go to Madison, it's fine. If you want to go to Orlando, we might try and cut you off there, but a little too far. But you know, if it's reasonable and it's the right thing to do for you medically, then yeah, we'll do one. Do whatever you want.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem.
I would like to say how much I appreciate working with Marty Tompkins, Dane Castle, and the team from Century through this process. Everyone has been very helpful and professional, and we all work together, and of course, Mr. Bishop, we all work together to bring this to you as quickly as possible.
Good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that the board consider approval of draft countywide emergency medical services EMS agreement with Century Ambulance Services. That's my motion.
And I'll second that motion.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
No, sir.
Now, that was 6. We got 7. Did we take care of that too, this while ago?
Well, I believe, from what I'm hearing, we need to change this to 5 years. And this would be contingent upon, with the understanding that we will be executing a termination with Doctors Memorial Hospital.
That leaves.
Yes, so, would it be appropriate to date this lease January 1st, and bring the termination agreement to the board on January 4th?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're not looking to vote on this today, we vote until we do get that termination, I wouldn't.
Well, we can vote on it contingent upon us getting, DMH to agree to terminate. Mr. English, follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next one is. Am I right? I'm not reading about these. Okay, who's gonna speak to number 8? It says the county attorney, the county administrator, and the county engineer. Update the board on the status of the Foley Cutoff Road construction project. Contractual dispute. Oh, that you, Kim?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, so what we decided is that we would come back to you after having met with you on the 7th, I think it was, or the 4th, wasn't it? It was the 7th, wasn't it? December 7th, where we gave you the various options and the board elected to pursue option number 2 under those recommendations. And just to kind of refresh your memory on that option number 2, we were hoping to kind of pursue an assignment of Pygett's rights and responsibilities under that contract to Anderson Columbia in exchange for the surety being accepting of that transfer and the understanding of the additional costs associated with that. and then remitting the balance of the payment to Pygott to kind of sever that relationship completely. So after we met with you guys and kind of had that direction, we, and when I say we, I'm talking about the four of us. It is myself, the county attorney, the county administrator, and our CEI manager, Mr. Phil Bishop. So kind of drafted a letter that I think you guys should have in your packet. It's the December 9th letter. And we kind of went through, and in the spirit of that option number 2, kind of gave an early Christmas present, is what we kind of felt it as, to Pygott, to basically allow them to kind of save their professional reputation at the same time that we were going to protect our financial responsibilities for the project. All in all, trying to work cohesively together to try to get the project done as quickly as possible. And I think if you were to go through those various items through there, you kind of understand our position of what we were offering and why we were offering it. And obviously our intention in that was to basically allow them the opportunity to finish the job and not to be declared in default because of, from a job standpoint, having that declaration of default on their resume doesn't bode well for future bonding. So we really tried. I thought it was a good effort that we offered them. But unfortunately, I think you will also see in there, in your packet, there was, and the front of it is dated December 18th, which is from Mr. Conrad to us, the four of us. And on the back side of it, it is an email on December 11th, and that was from Steve Sellers, who is the council representing Pygott. And this is their, for lack of a better term, their counter proposal to the December 9th offer that we gave them. And in a nutshell, kind of paraphrasing, it literally says that the only way we're going to do this is if you give us everything that we were entitled to, don't assess any penalties to us, no matter what the contract says, and let us go forward without any threat of any kind of damages until we finish the job. And not only that, we want to have the full extent of the time frame that you were able to receive from DOT on your funding agreement to allow us to finish all the way through April. Our position on this was, well, let me just tell you, my first position was tell them, sorry about your luck, no thank you, you can hit the road, I don't really want to deal with you anymore. So, what we did, you already have this, is we have drafted a letter. This letter basically takes and makes the realization that further discussions with Mr. Sellers or Pygott is an exercise in futility. There is no need for us to continue this back and forth because all it does is it threatens the value of the work effort that's been produced in the field today. And it's only going to serve to increase not only the cost associated with finishing the project, but also the potential for liability for the people who are traveling down that road. So what we have done, our county administrator, called me in and said, all right, let's go through the performance bond and make sure that we've dotted all our I's and crossed our T's. So in this letter, you're going to see that we are formally declaring, and I should have really put again in there, but we are formally declaring that we want the surety to complete this project under performance bond. And what we did is we said that we've exhausted all reasonable efforts to kind of get this project to a resolution where everybody was in a compromise that hasn't been successful. So what we are doing is with the items 1 through 5, you will see that each one of those includes a citation to the performance bond. The performance bond primarily under chapter, the section 3, and then primarily under section 3, it gives different obligations that we have as the owner for this to ensure that we met those conditions prior to the surety being responsible for them meeting their obligations under the bond. So you can see that I've included and made reference to when we've made notifications that we were intending to declare default. We've notified the surety that we were going to exercise the bond. And we have attended a resolution conference with the surety. And then lastly, we are agreeing as required that the balance of the contract funds can be used towards the surety living up to their obligations to finish the job. So then you get into the last paragraph. We are telling them that having met these prerequisite conditions, we want to effectuate the requirements of the bond paragraph 4.1, which is that we are telling them we want this job finished. We want a response from you that's going to say what your direction is going to be. And when I say they, I mean the surety company. This is all being addressed to Mr. Pentecost, which is the claims counsel. In that bond, they have 15 days to respond back to us. It's our plan to once we, hopefully either we receive consensus on the wording of this letter or you guys make modifications or something tonight. But anyway, we wind up with a single product that we can take, and Mr. Conrad can formally send this via email to Mr. Sellers tomorrow, and then follow it up with probably a certified version of a hard copy to them so that we can have that as documentation. This is unfortunately where we think we're at based on where we have come from. The back and forth that we've had is it's proven to be a required effort, but really it didn't get us anywhere. So I am here suggesting that this is the direction that we pursue. I believe I have concurrence from the remaining parties of the four. And I would offer that I would ask the board to endorse this position and its distribution to the sureties council.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So, LaWanda, are you in agreement with what the engineer is proposing also?
Yes.
Okay. Since I know that y'all have spent untold hours with this, and it's really been a stressful situation, but I would agree, and I would be willing to accept your recommendation, and this board go along with your proposal.
And I will follow that up with, what we're really trying to do is we want to get that job done, but we don't want to be in a position to where we have waived our rights to make those claims for the institution for this job. So you've got a 15-day response there that the surety has to say what they're going to do when they receive this notification. What that's going to entail, we have no idea. They could clearly come back and say, you know what, we don't think we have any liability associated with this, and if you want to address this, we're going to proceed to the court system. They could say that. But let me just suggest that we don't know that that's the possibility until we at least take this formal action. And if they do, under that same paragraph of paragraph 4, you'll see in the bond that we have the opportunity at that point in time to forge ahead without, and I want him to justify this or to verify this, without our waiving any responsibility for claims under paragraph 6, I believe it is.
We're hoping that's true.
At least that's the way it's written.
It's the way it's written. We're hoping that that's true. I mean, if you read the correspondence that I had with the attorney for PIGOT, Mr. Sellers, I was frustrated in that we made a very good, fair offer to them, and we get back the same stuff, even worse. For instance, saying that, number one, that he says, well, let's go to arbitration. No, I want to go to arbitration. 2, that PIGOT's gonna complete it by April the 21st or whatever, 2021, I can foresee that being a problem. And, you know, and if y'all remember that the time that we were talking about, are we going to be able to get an extension from the Florida Department of Transportation? We did. Your engineer got it. He got it. I'm smiling behind the mask.
Me too.
I mean, because we didn't know whether we were gonna get that or not.
It didn't look good.
It didn't look good, you know? So I learned something about bonds, with respect to this. If the bonding company has to pay, they are able to go against PIGOT to get it back. So you see where they're coming from. So, they should, but, that's not our problem, you know? And so we're jumping off and being aggressive, but I think we should be.
Saying they accept this, it's turned over to Anderson Columbia regardless, we end up having, whatever we end up coming with this. How long is it gonna take to finish this project, once it's started from start to finish?
There's about 60 days worth of physical construction effort once Anderson is to arrive on site and mobilize.
January, February.
If they were to, you know, show up January 4th, yes, sir, I believe that they would finish at the latest sometime in March. So we are thinking at worst, if we can move forward with this, is that we are going to have about a month worth of playroom there before we get down to the wire.
We're still considering really this method of this procedure, but then the possibility really is option 3 is still, I guess, the.
Option 3 is going to be the last resort. If the surety comes back and says, and it's not really fully option 3, because we are not going to waive our rights.
In theory.
That's right. If we were to terminate the contract for convenience, we basically said, we're tired of this, we're gonna just split the bill for it, and we're not gonna get paid back by anybody. We don't wanna do that. We want to take and say, surety, we are tired of this, we have tried back and forth, and this really hasn't resolved anything. We want you guys to live up to the bond, there's a reason the bond is there, and we want you to enforce it. If they come back and say no, then we ought to in turn say, well, thank you for your efforts here, sir. We will go and proceed with completion of this contract, and you will receive a letter and an itemized statement of our cost. We will seek for restitution. That's how I envision this to be.
That when we meet that Philadelphia lawyer.
You don't need to. Actually, to our benefit, the venue for this is in Taylor County, and I think we probably ought to have a Taylor County attorney.
Okay, we get Taylor. Okay, Jim.
I've got one question, it might be directed to Mr. Conrad. The liability right now, does it go back to their performance bond and their attorney as far as somebody running a pothole down there this weekend after this rain that's coming and has to run off the road and hurt themselves? Where does the liability fall into that?
Everybody.
And I will say, in recognition of that, Public Works crews were out there yesterday and today to address, there was 4 primary areas that were noticeably inconvenient. I won't say there was any safety hazards out there, because I wrote it yesterday. I relocated two sets of mailboxes. I met with the first Public Works crew and asked them, when their other crew was free, for them to check and anywhere there were washouts that was encroaching close to the roadway that had the possibility of someone not paying attention and getting into the shoulder, for them to address those. And this is all being addressed by hand. And then we took and added to that request that the Public Works take some lime rock material down there, and it was primarily on the south end, basically from McCarb onto the south, and to address those more noticeable areas by placing lime rock material in those potholes by hand and not putting any equipment out there, so that we don't wind up getting into the position of, okay, well, everything we have done, you blade off into the shoulder, and now you're gonna make our costs go up. So it was a very tedious effort. The first section of that road, all the way down to Macari, I went down it comfortably at 30 miles an hour. There, if you run off on that road, you've got to start paying some attention to what you're doing.
There's a front coming, you know, Thursday, they're talking about that big rain, 90% chance, it might change anytime, but, you know, I was just thinking about, you know, when the person has a wreck down on the Cow Creek grade, the newspaper had headlines, lady runs in pothole, loses control of the car and hits a tree. And it was a fatality.
And I will say, if you look at the very last sentence on this letter, it says that continued delay will only increase those costs further, increase those costs envisioned in paragraph 6, and unnecessarily present added liability from an unfinished roadway. We are trying to alert the surety that it's not just the cost to finish the construction effort, but there's a liability associated with it, because if we are approached about an accident down there, you better believe we need to be telling them, all right, guys, this is your project. You should have addressed this, and you shouldn't have been dragging your feet.
That's why I brought this up. I wanted to clear the air, make sure that everybody understood that they are the bonding company, and that company is liable. Isn't that what I'm hearing?
Everybody, they're gonna sue everybody.
I know they will, but what I'm saying is,
It's fair to say that Public Works, our engineer, Taylor County has used due diligence
we
to
did.
minimize
we did our
risk,
part.
to try to be sure there's not a safety hazard.
And that's why today-
When we start talking hand crews, that's to the nth degree, and thank you very much, by the way.
And that's why today we made sure, I wanted to contact the Public Works and make sure that they kept an account of the materials, the labor, and the personnel that they were putting out there to address this stuff, because in paragraph 6, you better believe that's going to be included in the overall damages total that we are going to be seeking recovery on.
She's gonna keep a track of all what it costs and the labor and
Not
everything.
her, but Brenda, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
So, and that is a documentation of our diligence to address any safety issues in the meantime.
You just answered my question as far as the money we're spending today. Just want to make sure we put that back apart. As
It
part
will
of
be
the
included.
surety bond
Yes, sir.
on this claim.
What we're asking for is, I've done the letter on my letterhead, and that, if y'all would give us the okay, we would, email it. We're gonna get his email address tomorrow. I don't know that I have it, but we'll get with you.
Yeah, it's on the email that seller sent you. It's Mr. Pentecost at the end.
You need a motion to proceed?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make that motion that Mr. Bishop, proceed with email and regular mail to,
I'll second that motion. That sounds
And
good.
motion and second, all in favor?
I send it certified return receipt request, but also, and regular mail and emails, triple.
Yeah, and all I would say is that, when we get the response back, probably expect us to come back. So I don't know that, given the 15 days, that we would be in a position to make the agenda and present information on the 4th, but presumably the 19th would be a reasonable time frame for us to come back. Hopefully, that's just a point that we come back and say, Anderson's been out there for the last 2 weeks. That'd be great. But I don't really expect us to be able to come back until the 19th.
How much time does Anderson need in order to respond to start on this project?
They would respond back to us on Friday, with it being the holidays. That kind of gives them a little bit of help to prepare for mobilization sooner. But they typically, in a notice to proceed document, we give them 14 days. So from the time we notify them that we want you to proceed, they have 14 days to start. And that's just logistics.
it's possible then, if this process takes 15 days and they take 14 days, we're talking 29 days out.
I would say that the best case scenario would be no less than that, yes, sir.
But that still gives us time within the extended deadline with DOT to complete this project.
Yeah, because you're talking about just getting to January is 2 more weeks.
Kenneth, if I may, I think we do need to point out that this may be subject to a different interpretation by the surety company. They may not feel like that we have met all the conditions in 4, and that we're at number 5, we're at the 15 days. So really, I think it's difficult to, I mean, I understand that we're very hopeful that this, once they receive the letter, that they'll give us an answer. But this surety is missing some interpretation and definitions. So I'm not sure what their definition of reasonable promptness may be. They may not feel like that we have sufficiently met the conditions. So I don't think we'll really know for sure what their position is until they respond to the letter. Would you agree?
I would agree to the extent that I think by enumerating each of these as our position that we have met those obligations and specifically citing that portion of the performance bond, it should force their hand to specify which one we haven't met and the reason that they feel that hasn't met that obligation. So I would say at least we've focused the target quite a bit more.
Yes.
Versus just, you need to read paragraph 3 and 4, make sure you meet the obligations, which was one of the earlier correspondence.
Correct.
But Kim, I think somewhere down the line, somebody needs to man up and put the big shorts on.
Amen.
And say that we have, Perry has done this, Taylor County has done this in good faith. The contractor was there, and they're not doing what they need to do. They paid us as the surety bond people. Now, we have talked to them several times, and then it's time for somebody to pull and rip it up and do go to work.
It makes you want to walk in there and literally throw the contract on the table and say, who signed this?
Yeah.
And if you sign this, you gotta live by the terms that's inside it.
What else do I, we can discuss it as long as you need to. When we leave here, we need to leave here with the.
Yeah, I sent Mr. Conrad an email that has this language in it, because there was a couple of tweaks that's in that copy that's there. I gave you this version as well as the marked up version. So he has that so that he can send that tomorrow.
Okay.
It's sitting at his computer waiting on him to get back. So if y'all don't have any problems with it, we are happy.
You're gonna shoot it to them tomorrow, email. That's,
More ways than one.
3 ways.
All right, thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
I want to say thank you very much, and thank you again for all the time and effort y'all spent on this.
It's definitely all 4 of us, for sure.
Thank you.
Number 9, comments and concerns from the public. Is there anyone? Board information matter. Is that you next? Number 10.
Could I present some informational items,
Yes, ma'am.
even though it's not agenda specifically? Would that be okay? I just wanted to update the board on some dates and some other information. Tentatively scheduled for January 8th at 5 o'clock is our legislative delegation meeting with our legislative delegation. That time and date may change. I received a phone call today, so I will update each one of you as soon as I receive that information. And just for your information regarding our legislative delegation, FDOT has confirmed that we should not submit sidewalk projects as earmark requests because it could affect our funding in years to come. So we would like to remove all the sidewalk projects from our earmark requests, and I'll bring you a new list at the next meeting. Also, our holiday schedule is that the county offices are closed Thursday and Friday, which is Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and January 1st, which is the Friday after, for New Year's Day. Our roll-off sites are closed Christmas Day alone. Also, the CARES Act deadline was extended by an entire year. This will affect our SHIP funds. We may be able to approve additional applications, and we're waiting on information from Florida Housing and GSG. And also, I am happy to report that the additional safety measures on Dead Man's Curve is moving forward. The ground and rumble strips were installed today from the north and south sidelines and the center line. There has been a new light installed that's much brighter, it appears to really light up that entire curve. And then we will be installing additional chevron signage. So we're almost complete with that project. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I wonder, when is the next time that we'll be discussing our insurance, our employee insurance?
Our health insurance?
Yes.
Probably not until, before our budget hearings. If we have any type of workshops planned, any strategic workshops, we could talk about it then.
Okay, because there's some concerns that I have.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, and I think I might have asked you this before, but is there any way that we can have a tax deferred plan so that we can put money into a plan so that we have like a debit card? So say you put $4,000 or $5,000 in it, or whatever you decide to put in it, and then it's tax deferred, and you can use that all year long. Is there any way that we could check into that for our employees?
Yes, I can take that to the health insurance committee. So you're talking about a flexible spending account,
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
It's just where you put in money every month or whatever you decide to put in, and then it's tax deferred.
Yes, ma'am. I can take that to the insurance.
I'm sorry?
You pay taxes on it when you use it?
Yeah, it's just like you get a debit card. You pay your money in, and then you're issued a debit card. And so when you go to the doctor or whatever, you present, and whatever your balance is that you have to pay, that the insurance is not gonna pay, and, every time you go, it's $20 or something. So you just give them that debit card, and they take that money out of there, but the beauty of it is it's tax-free money.
It's free tax. It's
Free
not
tax.
a deduction of what it is, and the card is gonna be specific to your doctor visits, like Chantal. It's just pre-tax money is what you're spending.
It saves you a little tax money.
Yeah. I always turn my wallet out of my pocket. Yeah?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas to everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
We appreciate the work you do. I know sometimes it looks like we don't appreciate what you do. Everybody works hard, gets paid well, and do good.
Yes, sir.
With
Thank you.
that, what do I hear?
Motion adjourned. Second.
Good. All in favor? Mike doing the house?
The host has ended this call. Goodbye.